Good morning and welcome to this meeting of the Mid-Suffolk Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Sarah Mansell. I will be chairing the meeting today. This meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The meeting will be recorded except where there are confidential or exempt items. If any member of the public attending the meeting objects to being filmed, please advise us immediately and we will ensure that they're not included in the filming. Members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. If you intend to do so, please could you inform the committee clerk. May I please request that mobile phones are on silent or switched off and that your laptops are switched to silent. If you hear the fire alarm, please leave the building immediately via a fire exit and make your way to the assembly point at Ipswich Town Football Ground. Firstly, we have some introductions. On the front row, on my left, we have the area planning manager and the two planning officers who will be presenting the cases today. Behind them, we have our legal advisor, Ian Dupre, and we have the governance officer, Claire Philpott, and we have Alicia Norman and Beth Webb, also keeping the meeting running to order, and the members who will be making the decision are sitting on my right. Can I move to the agenda, please? Item number 1, apologies for absence and substitutions.
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Gilly Morgan.
Thank you. And item number 2, to receive declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests or other registrable or non-registrable interests by members. Are there any interests to declare? I take that as Councillor Penny? Do you want to put your mic on?
Having regularly visited the John Peel Centre, and I've also been given an informal tour of the upstairs part last summer, but not in relation to this application. I don't know if we need to declare those things.
Well, I was going to say I also had an informal tour, and I was going to put that as the site visit.
So that will come on to personal site visits. We'll record that, but that's fine from an interest point of view. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Warboys?
Yeah, me too. Visited.
Yeah. So item number 4, declaration of personal site visits. I was probably on the same informal tour that Councillor Penny and Councillor Warboys were on. So as if you put your hand up if you have had a tour of like the upstairs and the back room of the John Peel Centre. Okay, for personal site visits. And clearly, I fairly regularly go to the cafe at the front as well. But I presume that's just members of the public anyway, so that's not really a site visit. Okay, and no site visits for Old Newton, I presume. Oh, okay. Right, item number 5, confirmation of the minutes of the Planning Committee meeting held on the 27th of August 2025. Are there any points regarding the accuracy of the minutes? Could I have a proposer, please? Councillor Haddingham, and seconded Councillor Hardingham, and the governance officer will now conduct the electronic vote to accept the minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress. Thank you, members. That's 6 votes for and 1 abstention. That's carried.
Thank you. So item number 6, to receive notification of petitions in accordance with the Council's petition scheme.
None received, Chair.
And we will consider applications numbers DC 25-03346 and DC 25-03347 first, which is the John Peel Centre. The case officer will provide a presentation which covers both the application for planning permission and the listed building consent, and then we will have to have 2 separate votes. So So I'll now invite Finlay Mackenzie to introduce the applications to committee, and welcome to Planning Committee, because I think this is your first Mid-Suffolk Planning Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We've got two separate applications, one for the listed building consent and one for the Planning Permission. The site is in Stowmarket, as you can see on the map. So here you go. So the listed building consent focuses only on the heritage focus and the internal works, whereas the Planning Permission covers the change of use, heritage, flood, highways, amenity, design, ecology, and landscape. So the listed building consent is strictly focused on the heritage aspects. The Planning Permission is the wider scope of the scheme. So here's the site in the centre of Stowmarket. We've got the Asda with the car park. We've got the Museum of East Anglian Life, now the Food Museum, the Mix, and the Stowmarket railway station to the north as well. Here's a closer view. So the white building, you can see that is the listed building. That's the front, which faces the marketplace. And the other view, that's the current main entrance to the John Peel Centre at the rear. So that is the other side of the marketplace, not really in the public realm. So this is a map of the constraints. So we've got public rights of way, the conservation area outlined in purple, and the nearby listed buildings. Main ones to consider are the cluster of orange, so grade 2 ones, which are mainly sort of Victorian or earlier buildings around the marketplace, and the grade 1 listed church to the rear. So this is the red line plan. So the red line covers the listed building and the alleyway to the south, and the blue line covers the current John Peel Centre. So that's the listed building as viewed from the marketplace, and the non-listed, but it is still considered a non-designated heritage asset, of the John Peel Centre to the rear. So the listed building consent covers the internal restoration, including the lift, removal of the modern partitions, and the repainting of the existing front door to red. And it does also cover the new glazed entrance door, which will be replacing an area which is now windows. The recording studio, so that's just the fabric, the signage out the front, the facade lighting, and the stage access. And it doesn't cover the event management, noise, or flood risk, whereas the Planning Permission, as you can see, covers there's a large amount of crossover, but there are some differences, mostly to internal works and use of the land. So if we look at the main areas that are covered under the Planning Permission, so this is the existing front elevation, faces onto the marketplace. So that window that's divided into two, that used to be an ATM for the bank. And this used to be the Cornhall entrance up until about the 1980s. You can see pictures of it in the report in the listed building consent. So this is the proposed. So we've got the letters, John Peel Centre up on the top. There used to be letters up there, I believe before the 1980s as well, that said National Provisional Bank, but now it will say John Peel Centre to reflect its different use. Same, again, new lettering above the doors and the central windows, so John Peel Centre for Creative Arts. That, again, reinstates previous lettering that used to be there when it was the bank. We've got the newly painted red door, the reinstated window in the middle, and the modern glazed entrance to the right-hand side. And above them, we've got the reinstatement of the historic ironwork above the doors that was also removed in the 1980s. There you go. So this is the alleyway to the south, which is included in the red line. So if we see here, oddly enough, one bay of the Cornhall is included within the listed building. So I try to outline that in red there. That's the doorway to the listed building, as you can see here. So that's the view from the inside. And you can see there's a wall that partitions the John Peel Centre from the bank, and that will be knocked through to create the proscenium arch, which is the archway that goes above a stage. So they'll be connected through that way, and there's also a doorway proposed as well. So this is the proposed view. So there is a first floor door, along with an external staircase and the removal of the HVAC units as well. So this area, there you go, was previously indoors, and you might not be able to see it on this picture, but there is a little fireplace there as well, so it's sort of returning itself back to how it was years ago. This is the east elevation, so this is sort of the back of the listed building. There's 2 windows here. There's lots of vents and different sort of, quite a scattered arrangement really of different vents for the boiler, and there's like a kitchen fan and stuff like that. So the plan is, you can see on the other one, is to formalise that by just having essentially one big vent. The details of that will be covered under a discharge of condition. So if we look at the internal works, mostly covered by the listed building consent. So this is the ground floor, so the current cafe, and you can see to the south, there you go, that is the new door here that was previously there, and that's the John Peel Centre existing there. So this, there you go, sorry.
Might be worth doing with the mouse.
With the mouse, oh yeah.
On it and then it'll appear.
That's better. So this area is the proposed new stage, and then this is that existing brick wall that separates the John Peel Centre from the bank, this bay of the Cornhall. So in the proposal is to be able to walk from the marketplace here straight through into the John Peel Centre, whereas currently you have to go sort of all the way through the Butter Market, round past the church, all the way around. So, really connect the John Peel Centre to the centre of town here. So this is the same view, just reorientated. So if you were coming in from the marketplace, you would come in from here. This is the current entrance. The cafe bar is retained, but there is some reordering. So the view, so this is what the doorway currently looks like, and this is the proposed door. So it will balance out the front facade as well. And this is the current box office, and I think it's just like a little storeroom. So that is then gonna get sort of made smaller, so you can walk through sort of behind this wall, essentially into the main John Peel Centre. Then this is the basement and the attic. I didn't manage to make it up into the attic when I did my site visit, but I believe it's just for sort of general maintenance and storage. This is the view of the basement currently. So there's 2 bank vaults. The view, you can see that's the door open at the left-hand side. That's going to be the the beer and wine sort of cellar. So that will make it easier for them to have proper taps in the bar and the cafe area. And then the other door on the right-hand side, that is going to be the recording studio as well. So they're going to retain as much of the original bank doors and anything that's sort of historic merit, but transform the space, which is currently used as sort of informal storage, into a proper recording studio. Then this is the first floor, so this is what is called the Victorian Ballroom. So the current view here, there is a false wall. So there's a line just sort of here on the plans. So the room is currently in sort of 2 bays of 3 are accessible. So that wall will then get pushed back to where that black thicker line is over here to create an area of like acoustic barrier, so the bank to the north and the bank to the south aren't as impacted by any events that take place. And that is the view south, so that's the existing wall. There'll be a new wall put in front of that to create that acoustic barrier. So this is the section, so this is looking sort of from the marketplace but without the wall in front of it. So you can see this is the sort of the grand Victorian entrance there, which currently doesn't sit in the middle because of that false wall. So we're there looking to put it back to how it was, that in the middle, and the inclusion of a new access door to the toilets here, which currently you have to go out and then back in, but now you'll be able to access the toilets directly from the ballroom. Okay, that's the false wall identified again there. This is the view of the wall, so that will be the partition. So there's not much change in the view, it's just getting pushed back. There you go. And then this is the first floor again, and this area here is shown on this section here. So this is the new office space and the landing and the stairs. So that part is this part, and that part is that part, essentially. So there's a new sort of floating office and the new lift shaft and the landing and the staircase, which lead to the external staircase as shown before. So the lift is proposed by the agent to go to all levels, including the stage. So the whole site should be fully accessible to anyone that needs a lift. And here's a closer view of the staircase and the toilet. So the toilets are currently on this side, and they're just going to get flipped to this side, and the door moved slightly as well, so there's not much change there. The plan is to retain the existing sort of grand staircase, but get rid of some of this sort of 1970s carpet and bring it back to how it was back in its heyday. And then this is the view here. So the staircase, which is this metal frame, will be replaced by a proper staircase in this area. There you go. And then if there were any questions about site photos, so these are in full view. So that's the front. That's the current entrance to the John Peel Centre. That's the rear vents on the window. It's the cafe. That's the box office and where the new entrance will be. The bank vaults, the staircase. It's the Victorian ballroom entrance. It's the false wall. It's the south wall of the ballroom. The toilets. That's the westernmost bay of the Cornhall, which is in the listed building view from the other side. This is where the external staircase will be, same as here, and that's it. There you go. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from members to the case officer? Councillor Penny.
Just on the heritage aspect, on page 40, it's the heritage team comment says that less than substantial harm would be caused because it would involve the loss of fabric and alteration of the interior design. Is that just specifically referring to the partition wall downstairs and moving the false wall upstairs?
Yes, there's some element of that, and also the wall that separates the John Peel Centre from that westernmost bay of the Cornhall, that is also being removed. So that fabric, a heritage officer would say that there's always a level of harm involved in removing some of the fabric, because there is historic interest in showing that, it was the entrance to the Cornhall, then it became the bank, but in terms of bringing it back, the positives of that outweigh the harm of removing that fabric.
Thanks.
Any further questions for the officer? We don't have any public speakers, but we do have a written comment from Councillor Walters, who's the ward member, who can't be here today. So I'm going to read out Councillor Walters' comments. I want to make it known that as ward councillor for St Peter's in Stowmarket, I fully support applications DC 25-03346 and DC 25-03347. The John Peel Centre is an amazing asset for the people of Stowmarket, and we are extremely lucky to have it in the centre of the town. The next phase of refurbishment and alterations work to increase the use of the centre is a really exciting one, and I look forward to using it both as a guest and a volunteer. Enabling access for everyone to the majority of the building via a new front entrance and lift means even more people will be able to enjoy the broad range of events staged there. The internal and external plans look excellent and will enhance the appearance of the building and bring it fully into the heart of the town. This means hearing people say, the John Peel Centre, where's that, will become far less frequent, which can only be a good thing. I can't wait to see it finished. So that's Councillor Walters' comments. So I'm now going to open up the item for debate. As there are two separate applications to be considered, we will debate application number DC 25-03346 for the planning permission first, followed by a vote on the application before moving on to the listed building consent. So we're going to start by debating the planning permission, because we've got to do this as two separate votes. And I'm sure some of the items, some of the things you might say are probably relevant to both cases. which doesn't matter, but we do have to just do the vote separately. So would anybody like to sort of make a start? Did I see your hand, Councillor Elkin, or was that... Well, Councillor Haddingham definitely put a hand up, and then Councillor Warboys.
I can't see anything other than good things with this, you know, positives, and I'm not, it's great, as you well know, that I don't often go to Stowmarket, but I can't think of anything better for it to happen than this building being brought back into, more use and being used, and I think everything's positive, and yep, it's all good.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'm just echoing Councillor Haddingham's comments, really. I think this is a really excellent proposal. I really applaud the restoration of the Victorian ballroom. It's a splendid room, which was really sort of broken up by this false partition. I note the Heritage Officer's comments about the loss of symmetry and the facade with the introduction of a modern doorway, but I also agree with the case officers and the Heritage Officers where they agreed that this introduction of a modern doorway does sort of distinguish it as an entrance and brings it up to date as an entrance into a modern facility, and it's also more accessible than wooden doors would be. So I'd like to propose that we accept this proposal.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Elkin. And did you want to say anything?
No, just to sort of echo what's already been said, really. It's lovely to see a listed building being looked after and brought back into use. I know we have to give weight to even a very low level of harm, but the public benefits seem incredibly clear and substantial, so I'm very happy to second.
Sir Lawrence.
As a general principle for the whole development and redesign, I fully support it. My significant concern, to me anyway, is the gaudy colour of the door being painted Liverpool red. To me, it's totally out of context to the marketplace area, and I'm intrigued to know why that colour was chosen. It's not a settled colour, and it's not in keeping with that, in my view, with the marketplace.
Anyone else want to make a comment, Councillor Haddingham?
I was going to say, I love the red door. I think it's really cool. And I think it will just really make it pop, and I think all good things. Elizabeth Arden, Liverpool,
I too, we always have to take the heritage aspects into consideration, but the advantage of having for the John Peel Centre to actually have a door on the marketplace, I think far outweighs any harm that they might be doing to the listed building. And having had the privilege of going to look at the ballroom, which, you don't even know that it exists at the moment, I think it's fantastic to be able to open that up. The only comment I want to make is, I think in the report there was some issue about disabled access to the stage. So, and I don't think that's mentioned in the list of conditions or informative or anything. Does that come under this bit, or does that come under the listed building? If we want to say, can you make sure that there is disabled access to the back of the stage or something?
So it should be included in the conditions for the planning permission.
The M42 one.
I'm not sure. No, that's Brad's one. That's all right. So it should be covered under the condition stage access provision.
That does include disabled, fully wheelchair accessible.
I've had some. Me and the Heritage Office have had correspondence with the agent that they're looking at different options, but it needs to go through the discharge process because they haven't yet selected which lift or which type of lift, which company they're going to go with.
So with that proviso, I'm quite happy to support this. And as I said, I actually quite like the red doors as well. I think they make a statement. And yet, people worrying about upsetting the symmetry by having a modern door on the right. Well, there isn't a door at the moment. It's not symmetrical now. So and it will, if you've got the red doors on the left for the cafe and you've got these sort of modern looking glazed doors, they'll both make a statement and they'll both look like an entrance to something good, something worth going to. So yeah, I'm certainly in favour. Does anyone else want to make any comments? If not, then we'll go for the vote on the planning permission, which is the one ending 46. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, so this is the vote for the planning permission, and that's now in progress. Thank you. We will need to scroll down a little bit because the order's different to what's on the agenda. Thank you, members. That's 7 votes for. That's carried. Thank you.
Thank you. So we now need to deal with the listed building consent, and you can make further comments if you feel you want to make any more comments about the listed building consent before we go for a vote. Does anyone want to make any more comments? In which case we can go straight to the vote.
We need a proposal.
Well, oh yeah, we need a proposer, sorry. Councillor Penny, you're proposing? And Councillor Haddingham?
Yes, I am proposing.
Yeah. Did you want to say anything about the...
No, I fully agree that the public benefits outweigh the less than low level of substantial harm.
And Councillor Haddingham, I think, seconding. So we can go straight to a vote on the listed building consent.
Yes, thank you. That's now in progress as well. Thank you. Thank you, members. That's another unanimous vote. That's carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I was going to have a break anyway because I think we're just expecting the ward members. So I'm going to take a comfort break. My train was late, so I need a comfort break anyway. That was pretty quick, I must admit. I thought it might be about 10:15, but it's only 10. So if we have a break until 10:10. So, you know, and then Welcome back. We are now going to move to item 7A, DC 25011109, land east of Cross Green, Old Newton. And I will invite Bradley Heffer to introduce the application to committee. Thank you, Bradley.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members, ladies and gentlemen. This proposal you're being asked to consider is for outline planning permission for the erection of up to 8 self-build dwellings on a site to the east of Cross Green, Old Newton. It's outline, but the means of access for planning permission is being sought for that at this stage. So just to make that clear, the rest of it is outlined, but the access is a full permission being sought. This wider view aerial map shows the location of the site. You can see it edged yellowy orange in that plan, the hatching. And this nearer aerial view gives you some idea of where the proposal is in relation to existing residential development and also the recreation ground that serves the settlement to the east. The application site itself is edged red on the plan you can see there. The applicant owns or controls the land edged blue, which doesn't form part of the planning application. But just to make absolutely clear that there is additional land that's owned or controlled by the applicant immediately adjacent to the application site you're considering today. This is the constraints plan. This shows the site again in relation to the settlement boundary, which is with the brown line there. You can see that the site is within the settlement boundary. A potential constraint is identified by the Grade 2 listed building to the south, but you'll note the intervening development, which means that the setting of that building would be unaffected by the development, as would the setting of this building here. There's no nearer heritage assets than those two. And you also note the footpath, which is indicated to the north, but again is unimpacted by the development proposal. The reason this application has come to you is that the site red line application site does include land that's owned by the council, which is shown on this strip here. To make absolutely clear, that's the reason it's coming. So clearly there's council land involved as part of this proposal. This is the illustrative site plan, bearing in mind it's an outline planning application showing the organisation of development across the site. You'll note that in total, although the description says up to 8 units, there are 8 units shown on the plan. The means of access for which full planning permission is being sought is here. And the line you can just about make out there is the required visibility display for the site access. Other elements of the site access that will be provided, and I apologise for the fairly small scale of this, is a footpath across the site to the north, and also a new footpath to the south. And within the site itself, within Cross Green itself, there is a new pedestrian crossing which would link this footpath here with the existing network to the west. So all of that element that I'm speaking about now, full planning permission is being sought for that. Outline planning permission is being sought for the remainder. In general, the organisation of development, you'll note, is linear because of the nature of the site. Dwellings relating to the private drive which would serve them. All of the units on here are self-build, as I said initially, and all of the units are single storey. If members were minded to accept the recommendation on this application, a condition would be added to the permission which identified the nature of the development and secured the single storey nature of the development. Another suggested condition were you to accept the recommendation is that although this is an outline planning permission being sought, we think that it's appropriate at this stage to require that reserved matters are generally in accordance, substantially in accordance with the outline, with the plan you can see in front of you, because we feel that as a development response in this location, it actually fits in well with what's around it. This is a phasing plan, again, bearing in mind that it's a self-build development that's being sought. You'll note the first phase of development includes the access, and a condition of the highway authority is the access goes in before any other development takes place. On the late representation sheet that's been provided, the terms of the phasing plan would reinforce the fact that this road here should be provided to a standard, the internal estate road, if we call it that, should be provided to a standard that could accept construction traffic. So as these individual plots are built out, the construction traffic associated with that work can park clear of the existing road, because you'll have noted from the from the comments we've received from neighbours, one of the concerns, of course, is that construction traffic could cause a nuisance and safety issue, and that's a way we feel of seeking to address that. Other elements of the conditions would include a construction management plan and the usual controls that we would impose on that type of activity anyway. I'll finish off with some views of the site. The application site we're considering is this site here. This is taken from street view. It extends past the bungalow you can see there, southwards down the road, and goes past this curtilage of this dwelling here. And when I mentioned the link between the new access going in and the pedestrian link across, that will be approximately in that position to link in with the existing pathway on the western side. This is a closer up photo of the site and the adjacent bungalow. Again, you'll note the site is currently defined by existing established planting, and there's a chain link fence metre high to the front. This is a view looking the other way. Again, you can see the dwelling in the distance with the substation in front of it. And there's some shots of the type of development in the area. And given the context, we feel that the response that's proposed, i.e. the provision of single-storey development, which in truth will look similar to this, matches that context. With regard to the design, hopefully you'll have noted from the report that as it's an outline and it's a self-build, we've potentially got a situation where individual reserve matters proposals come in from individual self-builders. But clearly as an overall development, if I go back to the layout plan, what we're keen to ensure is a consistency of design across the whole site, bearing in mind not slavish adherence to a particular design, but I think there needs to be a cohesion in the design across the site, so we don't have a situation where you have 8 units that bear no not spatial, but design relationship with each other. So the sorts of things that the design code would cover would be the positions on site, final details of design in terms of palette of materials and form of buildings and things like that, to enable that to guide. And we've suggested that design code should be put in place prior to the submission of the first reserve matters application, in order that it's there and established to inform subsequent reserve matters proposals. The last thing I'd propose to say at this stage is that in terms of the actual self-built nature of it, we're content that we can offer control of that through condition rather than the need to enter into a Section 106 agreement. And as I said in the report, it's something it's identified in central government advice. The other thing I should have said, and apologies for omitting it, is this land here, which is owned and controlled by the applicant, is not part of the planning application. But in terms of the overall impact, particularly when perceived from this side, which has got public access, obviously being a recreation ground, the substantial amount of established planting along here would help to screen from views from the east. So as well as being well contained in terms of the residential development on these boundaries, we feel that the wider landscape impact would be reduced by that. So I think that's all I need to say at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you just also want to mention the late paper about the phasing and the hedgerow?
Yes.
Just in case people hadn't spotted that.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes. Firstly, on the late papers, I draw your attention to the phasing condition, which I did mention in the presentation, but just to make clear, we would want to ensure that the phasing condition did include the provision of the access road that I talked about up to a suitable standard to accept the traffic. I don't think we can actually require them to complete it entirely, but because normally the highway authorities say up to a binding course, but we can control that level. And also, because of the planted nature of the development, and people have obviously got used to the fact that there's a lot of vegetation on there at the moment, were that all to be cleared immediately, and then prior to the submission of planning reserve matters, clearly the impact on the neighbours in terms of the loss of all of that at once would be quite dramatic. So what we're actually saying is that where, as far as practical, the existing planting on the boundaries on the east, south, west and north is retained, well, not so much on the east, but the west, north and south is retained so that there is a decent established barrier between the neighbours that are there and the application site. And that's in addition to any landscaping scheme that we might approve anyway. And if you look at the layout plan, it does indicate on there that they're looking to provide a 3 metre high deciduous or hedging along those boundaries anyway. But it's a way of trying to control that impact, you know, not ripping it all out and then waiting for a 3 metre high hedge to grow. That's the point. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Elkin and then Councillor Haddingham.
Thank you, Chair. I might have misread it, but I think it's slide 7. It shows the visibility splay that highways would want to see, but it also shows what looks like lots of trees and hedges along the same line. So I was just wondering if those were staying or having to be removed to get the visibility.
This area here, apologies, sorry. This would be subject to a landscaping scheme. I think that the way that if you look at the planting that was in the photograph, it comes up tight to the boundary. So there aren't any trees of that size along there at the moment. They're fairly small trees, but there would need to be clearance in order to achieve the vision display. But as part of the landscaping scheme, these trees here would be put in as part of that. So there would be replacement planting.
Yeah, do you want something else?
Because that picture you showed has got quite dense hedging and then trees. So is that all having to come out to get the visibility, but then something will get put back? So it won't look like that slide, basically.
The planting that's there at the moment is dense. It's not, I think if you looked at the arboricultural report and the ecology report, there's nothing there that is considered to be unusual. It's nationally available, or, you know, it's not nationally scarce. But where the access comes in off of Cross Green, there will be clearance, but the purpose of the replanting behind is to secure the amenity back. On the other boundaries, there's no need to take all of that planting out in any event until we've secured, or it's augmented by additional planting as part of the landscaping scheme. So there will be replacement, but it would need to come out in order to provide the visibility display, or behind that, between the visibility display and the road.
Councillor Hedingham?
Thank you. Can you, on that slide 7, can you just show the strip of land that does belong to Mid Suffolk and why do we have it? Is it just where that substation is, or what is the nature? Why have we got that bit of land really?
If I quickly flick, that's the position of the strip. As you see, it narrows there and then gets slightly wider along there. It is in the application site and notice has been served on the council. So that's been done. But in terms of how it relates to there, it extends from here down to there, roughly.
So we're giving it up? I mean...
well, it would still be under our ownership. I don't think... Well, as I say, what I tried to emphasise in the report is the negotiations that may take place on the how the land may transfer or whatever like that isn't really a planning consideration. I think the key thing is that they need to cross that in order to get into the site. So therefore, whether you call it a ransom strip, it's just an issue that needs to be addressed later on down the line by the council as the landowner.
Okay, thank you.
I expect that the applicant will have to get a way leave or something to cross the Mid Suffolk land, but that's not a planning
I'm just
consideration.
thinking further down the line, would it be a headache?
Yeah.
But if it's not today's business, then fair enough.
Are there any further questions? Councillor Warboys?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The parish council raised some concerns about access, whether there was going to be access from the back gardens onto the playing fields. Has that been resolved, or?
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, when it first came in, the plan did show a pathway being created from the application site through that strip of blue land and straight onto the recreation ground. That objection was noted and that's now been removed, so that's been taken out. And I think that objection may have been repeated in their last consultation response, but it's not actually a feature of the plan. If you have a look on the plan that I've shown you, it's not in there anymore.
Yeah, I'll look. Thank you.
Councillor Hardingham?
Thank you, Chair. I note there's it's currently scrub, which obviously has a substantial biodiversity value, and the fact that this is self-built means there's no requirement for biodiversity net gain. I'm surprised that the ecology report hasn't mentioned the loss of biodiversity from the clearance of the scrub, which obviously is a valuable habitat, particularly for invertebrates. And I'm just wondering how that can be mitigated, if at all possible. That doesn't seem to crop up in the report at all.
The application is accompanied by surveys that have done an ecological assessment, and I think that in terms of the findings of the assessment, there's nothing that's been found there that's deemed to be of particular value in order for us to object to the proposal on grounds of ecological impact. I think that the species that are there in terms of the vegetation are perhaps, I don't know, they're not conducive to actually having that sort of, they don't actually warrant that sort of protection in terms of what's there at the moment. I think you're absolutely right. As this is a self-built scheme under the legislation, you don't have to provide BNG. I think that reinforces the need for the condition, and clearly were that condition to be challenged or changed in the future, then I think that the BNG element of it then comes into play, and I think that that's quite clear. But yes, that's the point where we're at this because of the self-build nature of it.
Yes. Can I have another question? Yeah. Could you clarify the nature of self-build? Because I note that it's a company which is applying for the planning permission, so albeit outlined at this stage, so there will be subsequently individual planning applications coming forward. But I'm not entirely clear what the definition of a self-build is. To what extent it involves actually hands-on work from the occupant, the owner.
I think that my understanding of it is that if you've got a self-build proposal generally, the person who's going to live in the dwelling initially at the time it's constructed has to have an active or substantial role in the design, creation, whatever you call it, of the individual proposal. I don't know if that covers it. Is that okay? Mm-hmm.
Question, Councillor Hardingham, but I'm happy to add in there. Yeah, there is a requirement that you are involved in the design of the proposal. So if this was a full and they all look alike, we would have to say that's not self-build. But as an outline, provided each person later has their own input onto each dwelling, that is part of the self-build. They then have to live there. I think it's 3 years that you then have to live there. If you don't, the implications, we do try and control that by condition, or 106 on occasion, depending on the nature of it. I think we put condition on this one about that. So if each house is not lived in for 3 years, the implications we could then deal with. But yeah, it is about being involved in the design and living there yourself for 3 years.
And SIL would then become payable, presumably.
Getting into the intricacies, I might have to defer to Ian on the...
Yes, if self-build properties are exempt from SIL, but if within 3 years they cease to be so occupied, then the SIL becomes reclaimable by our infrastructure team.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Penny, do you want to turn your mic off, Councillor Hardingham? Councillor Penny?
I was planning on asking a similar question to Councillor Hardingham just then. I'm aware of a development in my ward of 10 self-built properties that appear to have all been built together and had no input from
Is this a question?
the owner.
Sorry.
Yes. And they appear to be for sale on the open market. A couple of them have been temporarily occupied. How do we ensure that they will be true self-builds? I mean, what is the process? Is it just that we, if they aren't occupied by the person who has had primary input into the design, then we charge them SIL and retrospectively require BNG requirements, and how is it all enforced?
Can I ask if I say something and the planners can add it? I mean, it is an issue, Councillor Penny, that you've identified there. The definition of self-build is not without its problems, and it's pretty broad. The problems are, we've mentioned the issue of SIL, where there is a very firm mechanism that says if it's not occupied in the proper way within 3 years, they lose the exemption. And that is enforced by our colleagues in the infrastructure team. There's a kind of broader problem in that the planning policy, national planning policy requires, and the legislation indeed, requires us to give planning, as it were, weight as a material consideration to the fact that something's self-built. And there's a problem there in that if you're looking at the use of land in the strict legal sense. A house is a house is a house. A self-built house is still a house. Just like if you have a holiday home, you permit a holiday home, you have to have a condition saying it's only occupied part of the year, or a house that's for somebody who works like a caretaker or an agricultural worker, you need an occupancy condition. So we would, by some means, I think Gemma's indicating by condition, we would ensure that it was self-built, because otherwise they could, for want of a better word, an ordinary house is not a material change of use from a self-build. So we'd look a bit silly if we'd given them material consideration weight in the planning decision, and then it became an ordinary house anyway. So that there would have to be some means of safeguarding the position by way of a condition or 106, but condition may be more likely.
Does that answer the question? I mean, it does raise the issue of the BNG, and if these are given outline permission as self-built plots, surely we would expect them to come in as 8 individual reserve matters. If you've got a reserve matters for 4 of them, then that's not a self-build because there's 4 of them altogether. And is it something that the enforcement team can actually enforce?
Perhaps I'll come in there. So yes, essentially by putting that condition on, we're saying it's self-build. By putting that condition on, they do get those benefits of SIL and BNG, but they have to comply with the condition. If they're in breach of the condition, that is something that is workable from our point of view to enforce against. If they are looking to remove the condition, they'd have to apply to do so. So, well, actually, it's been 18 months, I'm going to sell it. Right, that makes the breach of the condition. You could apply to remove that, but the point they apply to remove that, the SIL team can come in, as Ian's mentioned, but also we would say, well, that now you've got to do BNG. Likelihood is probably off-site credits at that point. We haven't tended to experience it. We have got a fairly high demand through our self-build register for sites. I'm not aware of the one Councillor Penny mentioned, but I do know of a couple. There's at Thurston and for a couple of other places, they have come in and this is my house and this is what I'd like it to look like, and then the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one. I don't think we've seen so much of what happened afterwards. The ones we've seen have been fairly recently built. So I think that's probably something that is still evolving. But yeah, we do feel that the condition gives us the control that we would have and then the ability to claw back SIL and BNG in the future. Thank you.
Did you want to come back, Councillor Penny? And maybe the case that you were referring to, you know, has that been referred to enforcement? But that's outside this meeting. But
yes, it has. But I'm just sceptical of the process. It just appears that a single developer has built whatever they want and then tried to sell them.
Councillor Warboys and then Councillor Hardingham.
Yeah, I think this is relevant to what I'm presuming there'll be ecology surveys for the whole site. I'm assuming that though these are self-built and there'll be sort of a detailed planning application coming forward regarding each of the properties, that the ecology survey will stand for those. They won't have to redo the ecology surveys for each site. That will actually be a blanket survey.
The ecology survey generally, when you undertake an ecology survey, it has a shelf life. So I think is it 2 years?
2 years, isn't it? But
yeah.
For the reserve matters, it would apply, wouldn't it? It would.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it would continue to apply for the future reserve matters. To a degree, we've done that part of it for the outline that the ecologists are happy that those houses can be built. They've got a time frame in which to build them. That's that part of it. Brad's right. If we got a new outline in 2 years' time, we'd expect a new ecology, but we're not. We're expecting these to come in one by one as reserve matters, which has been dealt with as a whole package, essentially.
Lovely. Thank you.
Councillor Hardingham.
Beg your pardon. Yes, I'd like to just come to the sustainability features. I note that there's a requirement for air source heat pump details. There's no mention of provision of photovoltaics. I guess the EPC that's being sought will just be standard building regs, and that we're not looking for anything better than that. So that's the question really. Do we have a requirement for solar panels, and is there any consideration of going for a higher EPC than the minimum that's required? I would imagine that genuine self-builders would be interested in going for the very best standard they can afford, really.
Thank you, Councillor. There's, as you say, there's a specific condition has been recommended by the Environmental Health Officer in relation to air source heat pumps. Separate to that, we are recommending conditions in relation to M42 compliance and also a sustainability strategy. Because I think the key to bear in mind, and you know, it is a self-build scheme, I understand that, but the key is that as part of the outline planning permission, conditions will bite across the whole site, and one of the requirements would be a sustainability strategy that any reserve matters application would be expected to adhere to. So we haven't had the details able to progress that at this stage because it's an outline planning application, but as part of a series of reserve matters, the sustainability issues would be addressed through the approval of the sustainability strategy. And similarly, the design of the dwellings would have to achieve the M42 compliance.
Councillor Warboys?
I was going to leave this for the debate, but as we're talking about conditions and whether they apply to the whole site or not, would it be appropriate to condition that the all of the bungalows actually conform with M4, what is it, 2, that there are homes that can be easily adaptable for residents with reduced mobility? Would that be appropriate to apply as a condition for the whole site?
Yes, thanks, Councillor. The list of suggested conditions does include M42 compliance. So we're recommending to you that if outline planning permission is granted, that a condition is attached saying the dwelling should achieve M42 compliance as a principle.
Lovely, thank you.
Councillor Elkin?
I had a question about hedgehogs. One of the, I think, objectors' comments noted that the scrub on the site has families of hedgehogs living there at the moment, and I can't remember if they're red listed as yet, but they're heading that way very rapidly. So I was just wondering if a condition to ask for hedgehog highways in any fences would be reasonable.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, one of the summarised conditions does require a biodiversity enhancement strategy. If you're minded, as part of that, we could specifically identify that the strategy includes elements to encourage movement of hedgehogs through the site, because it's not an unusual requirement, as we all know. So I think that could be, you know, built upon in order to make that absolutely clear as that's a requirement of that strategy.
Thank you. Can I ask one more thing? Somebody else also mentioned turtle doves, which are red listed. So I just wanted to ask, was that picked up in the ecology report at all? I couldn't find anything in the papers.
Sorry, I missed the...
turtle doves apparently using the site, which are very rare.
I can't tell you that they were specifically surveyed for. Whether there's an element on the site that actually lives there or uses the site regularly, I can't say, in all honesty. I think that the range of surveys that have been carried out probably didn't include that particular species. Well, I can't say that it did.
Thank you. Councillor Lawrence.
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm getting a little bit confused because we've just heard previously that biodiversity net gain does not apply to self-build houses or applications. I thought I understood that, but in our conditions, as you've just mentioned, we do have a requirement of biodiversity enhancement strategy. What is the difference between biodiversity enhancement strategy and biodiversity net gain?
Thanks, Councillor Lawrence. Yeah, absolutely. They are two different things, but do cross over quite a lot. So our planning policies, previously and currently under the JLP, have a requirement for an enhancement strategy. That would be things like hedgehog-friendly fencing, bat boxes, owl boxes, bee bricks, that sort of thing. So quite specific habitats, I suppose. Whereas the BNG is the nationally required metric, so you have to work out the benefit of your current site, what you're then going to take out, and then 10% gain over and above that. So that's the slight difference between the two. So we can't ask this developer, because it's self-build, to work out what exists and how we get 10% over and above that. So replace that plus 10% if we're losing all of it, for example. That's what net gain does. What we can say is, okay, we think probably hedgehogs, most residential areas do have them, we can make sure we protect those. Bats, birds, bees, boxes, the like, absolutely things we can do. We've done stag beetle log piles where we've been aware of high populations of stag beetles. They are all relatively small scale enhancements rather than looking at that overarching gain. Does that help differentiate between the two? I appreciate it's a bit complex.
Very much so. Thank you very much.
So if we're going to, if there is a proposal and we reword the, whatever it was, the, I can't remember what it was, the condition to include things like hedgehog highways, can we also say, and any other enhancement schemes such as, when they come in with that scheme of biodiversity enhancement or whatever, it could include other things as well as hedgehog highways. I wouldn't want to limit it to only hedgehog highways, because you've mentioned bat boxes and stag beetle piles or whatever, and all of those would be welcome if they're deemed to be appropriate. So whatever wording it is, I don't want to limit it, is what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely. No, I think that's fine, Chair. I mean, I think what we normally do is ask them to put forward a strategy based on the ecology that we know is in the area. What I think we could do is make sure that includes hedgehog-friendly fencing, but leave the rest open, and that would still give us the flexibility. If you particularly wanted to mention turtle doves or any other species, we could mention them, but we would be looking for a comprehensive package of enhancements, essentially.
Thank you. I've just got a few other questions not related to biodiversity. You mentioned a pedestrian crossing on Cross Green. Now, Cross Green looks like a tiny little residential road. So when you say pedestrian crossing, what exactly do you mean? Do you just mean a lowered curb?
Yes, sorry, I don't want to over-egg that. It will be defined treatment within the carriageway rather than bleacher beacons and the zebra type thing.
But it will include a drop curb so that wheelchairs can get onto the pavement on the other side. I'm assuming that's what it meant. I just wanted to check that. And I also wanted to go back to the condition about them being single storey. There's single storey and there's single storey. So can we condition a roof height? And can we also remove PD rights so they can't put rooms in the attic and have a really high eave height? And my other question was about when we usually grant outline planning permission, there's a time limit saying reserved matters has got to come in within a certain time limit. Now, because we're expecting 8 separate reserved matters, if one of them comes in within the time limit and the other 7 don't, is that a problem? Or are we expecting all 8 of them to come in within the time limit?
Just on the point of the... sorry, I forgot what second point. Yes, sorry, apologies. The condition would say that accommodation can only be on the ground floor, I'm not sure we can control the ridge height per se, because we don't know what the buildings are going to look like at this point. But having said that, you're right, what we could do is take away permitted development rights in relation to openings within roofs, because that would then preclude the use of the roof for anything apart from storage, in all honesty. And, sorry, what was it?
Can I just come back on that? But presumably when the design code comes in, because you're expecting some sort of design code, they might have something about pitch and roof heights in that, which you will have some control over.
I think that it's tricky, because if you look at the relevant supporting document, the housing SDP, we can't be too prescriptive about, we can't actually impose a strict design. I don't think we're enabled to do that, but what we can do is, by way of the design code, establish some principles. But I think as part of that design code, you're right, we could actually say, bearing in mind that it's a single-storey development, we wouldn't expect that, you know, and that's the way the route, I think, would allow each individual applicant to apply their own design skill in those parameters.
Can I add to that, Chair? 'Cause I think you had another question, but I'll just finish up on that one. So I'm just thinking that permitted development rights for additional stories and opening to roofs could be removed. I can't remember the specific classes, but if you were happy to think about that come debate, we could delegate that and add that. To come back on the reserved matters point, in theory, yes, all reserved matters should be submitted within the timetable. On some very big schemes, we do say to them the first reserved matter should be submitted within the timetable, because otherwise you've got to go back around and do the whole lot all over again for quite a big scheme that you know it's going to take a number of years. I'm not sure that's strictly necessary here. I think it is that might be something you want to consider, whether you would allow them more flexibility by saying the first reserved matter has to come in before that date, or whether it is the standard, which is all reserved matters must be submitted before that date.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor.
It was just about the design code. I appreciate that's not getting set up today, but it was just to ask how you look at materials in that, because particularly, say, for sustainability, if you looked at the buildings you showed us around about, they were quite mostly brick, but if somebody wanted to put forward something super insulated, you know, hempen line and wood cladding or something, is there a way to ask now that the design code is flexible enough that it would allow, if somebody wanted to use super sustainable materials, that wouldn't get ruled out by the design code?
I think the design code, the SDP, it certainly would identify a suitable palette because of the location. But there's a palette in mid-Suffolk which is suitable across mid-Suffolk generally, and I think that hopefully that would provide some flexibility. I think that were different materials proposed, as long as in terms of the overall context that we're trying to achieve on the site, the design context, I don't think that would necessarily preclude those, particularly if it improved the sustainability credentials of a particular scheme. I think what we would be slightly nervous about would be a situation where a scheme of 8 dwellings came in that every single dwelling looked different, and there was no cohesion across the site in relation to the surrounding areas. So it's striking that balance, really.
Any further questions? If not, then I will now move on to the public speakers. We don't have anyone from the Parish Council, we don't have an objector or a supporter, but we do have the agent, Martin Last. So over to you, and you've got your 3 minutes.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Good morning, morning members and officers. I'm the agent for this outline application, which proposes up to 8 bungalows, 1 with 4 bedrooms, 4 with 3 bedrooms, and 3 with 2 bedrooms. Obviously, as your officer has said, that layout drawing is submitted as an indicative layout, but I can't imagine it will deviate from that very much. The site is within the village boundary, the indicative layout shows parking for 24 vehicles. The application seeks approval for the vehicular access only, with other matters reserved. A new footpath is indicated along the western boundary, predominantly on the land that's owned by the council. Prior to submission of this application, a pre-app was submitted with the appointed officer responding positively. The application, as you've discussed, is for self-build dwellings, and my client has people interested in some of the plots already. As requested by the parish council, the road and access will be constructed before the dwellings, i.e. as phase 1. Happy for that to be conditioned. The Highway Authority have no objection, and other consultees are happy. Over the last couple of days, I've confirmed to your officer that my client is happy to accept a condition requiring existing trees and hedgerows on the perimeter of the site to be retained where possible. Obviously, where we're proposing on the western boundary the new footpath, then that's going to involve the removal of what's closest to the road, but then we can replant that, and we'll obviously provide a detailed landscaping scheme. I'm happy with, I think, all of the conditions that you've discussed at length, so that's fine. And in conclusion, I ask members to support my client's application. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the agent? If there's no coming from there, can I just ask about this, the retention of the hedgerows? The problem I've got is the word where possible. And the reason I'm concerned is there have been at least 2 small developments in my ward where the first thing that the developer has done is ripped out a hedge. And you think, why have they ripped it out? And yeah, they promised to plant it again, and it backs onto other people's houses, or it backs onto a playing field or whatever, and it makes the building site just look so bare, and these houses look like they're just in your back garden. So is where possible a strong enough word? The people who live in those houses, the existing houses that back onto the site, if all of a sudden their back hedge is removed, it's a whole new ball game for them, really. Thank you.
I'm totally for the boundary treatment being retained. When I say where possible, obviously we have to create the footpath, because that's something that the Highway Authority have approved. But I will ensure that my client is well aware that he does not go in there and just remove everything.
Thank you. Any other questions of the agent? Councillor Penny.
You've just said that your client has people interested in some of the plots already. So is it expected that the reserve matters applications will be coming very soon, and do you foresee them all being built at the same time?
When we say very soon, obviously the people have to have, as you've already said, they have to have a significant input into the design of their dwelling. And the applications are likely to come in individually. At best, they might come in a block of 2 or 3 at the same time. Where he's at with the various people that have shown interest, to be honest, I'm not sure in detail. But I'm aware of the rules around self-build plots. And I suspect I will be on board with this application to its conclusion, or this development to its conclusion. It would normally be that I would be appointed by the individual plot owners to sit with them and see what they want in their bungalow. There is no intention to make the bungalows taller or loft conversions or all of that sort of thing, again, that you've mentioned. The proposal is for single-storey dwellings of varying floor areas and therefore varying numbers of bedrooms. So what you get is what you see on that drawing, really.
Thank you. Any further questions? There's one other question. You also mentioned that you specified the number of bedrooms in your when you spoke to us, but that's not something that we've conditioned, because that's just all that was in your indicative plan, I think. You've got the plan, and presumably you've got an idea of which is going to be 2 and which is going to be 3 bedroom, but that there's no restriction on that, or is it something that we can restrict?
Your officer would answer that better than me, but I believe that it's submitted indicatively, and therefore it can change at reserve matter stage.
Thank you. I don't know whether you'd like to come back in, Brad.
I think the point with that is that we think that the indicative layout works. One of the reasons we think the indicative layout works is the parking provision works, and the parking provision is based on it according with your adopted standard. I think it's a valid point, Chair, that you've raised in terms of if you feel that mix of those numbers is appropriate in terms of the parking provision. That's something that you may ask us to consider, but I suspect as part of reserve matters we would be considering the parking provision generally anyway on the site to make sure it accords with our adopted standards.
But because you're going to expect 8 different reserve matters, and as the agent said, we might get 2 or 3 come in shortly, and the others are hanging about. Well, if the first 2 or 3 do sort of meet with the indicative plan and the number of bedrooms and therefore the number of parking spaces is compliant, the next set of 2 or 3 might decide to put all 4 bedroom houses where they were 2 or 3 in the indicative plan. So will the design code, will that be more able to deal with the sort of number of bedroom sizes and parking plots on the whole site?
The purpose of seeking to secure the indicative plan now would be to basically inform anyone from plot 1 to plot 8. This is what we expect this layout to look at generally, bearing in mind that there's a design code that will be applied in regard to the individual design of the dwellings and how they sit on the plot. It's certainly within our control, once we get to plot 7 or 8, to determine that there's insufficient parking if they wanted to put something else on the site that doesn't accord strictly with the size of dwelling that's shown there. So I think there's an extra level of control through the reserve matters, because clearly we don't want to avoid a situation where people are parking the road because there's not enough parking spaces on site. And the other thing that I should have mentioned in my presentation is that we would specifically look to control, or the Highway Authority have requested control on the use of the garage as an accessible parking space as well. So that's something, that would have to be retained as part of a...
So that will also be part of the removed PD rights, that the garages have to remain as parking spaces?
Well, the way that it's, if you look at the Highway Authority, the way they've drafted it, I think it basically says that you can't, the garage has got to be accessible as a parking space as part of the overall development.
Any further questions? Thank you very much, Mr. Last. So we have 2 ward members for Old Newton. We have Councillor Agnes Watson, who's joining us on Teams, and we have Councillor Janet Pearson, who's here with us today. Do you have a preference for who goes first?
If you'll be reading Agnes's report, then fine for you to go first, if that's, or if
I think she's with us on Teams. So, shall we go to Councillor Watson first then? If Councillor Watson's there, and we'll just check she can hear us, or we can hear her.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, we can hear you. So would you like to go first?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. Most of the comments that I was going to make have been discussed already, but I will just go through them. I would support the points raised by the Parish Council, which have been some of them should be addressed, which is that the access road is built first, and reiterate that there's no access to the playing field from either the whole site or from individual houses or from their back gardens at a later stage. And as you've mentioned several times, having visited the road across Green, I would concur that it is very narrow, and there's going to be care needed when access for large vehicles and lorries during the construction phase. It's going to be quite disruptive for residents. The other thing that I wanted to say was, and which has been brought up really partly, but that it's for self-build houses. And I was wondering if these buildings could happen obviously at 8 separate times. That would make the actual construction phase very long, and it would be more disruptive for existing residents. So I don't know how this can be managed in some way, but obviously with having 8 different self-builds having at different times, it would prolong that construction phase, which would, with that access road being narrow, it would be a problem. So I don't know whether that's something that can be thought about. And the only other thing which has already been mentioned, that self-build properties are exempt from the biodiversity net gain. So I think it's really important, which you've already mentioned, that existing hedging, particularly to the east of the plot, which is already there. Obviously it's a plot with scrub and small trees on. That existing hedging and area is kept. Particularly when the site is cleared, that bit remains. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Shall we take Councillor Pearson's comments, and then we'll ask questions and either of you can answer. So over to you, Councillor Pearson.
Thank you, Chair. You've actually covered a large number of the points that I had to raise, but it leaves 2 main areas. One is hedgehogs. I've lived in Old Newton for 14 years, and I have seen a serious decline in the number of hedgehogs in that time. It links the concerns that Councillor Watson raised as well, that the habitat, some of the habitat needs to remain. It's all very well saying let's have some hedgehog highways, but they've also got to have somewhere to live. So that it's really important, I think, that habitat, some of it is retained. And one of the residents in their comments said that they know that at times the habitat is removed and then apologies afterwards that, sorry, we made a mistake. We have experienced that in Old Newton already, and so if there's anything that can be done to make sure that, I doubt, but I don't know if it's possible to put in penalties for doing such a thing, that would be very helpful. The other main aspect is about the existing residents and the roadway. The road is very narrow. I went down there this week. There were cars parked along the road, on the roadside. It means there is only room for 1 car to pass through. I'm not entirely convinced there's room for a big lorry to pass through. And I was wondering whether it's possible to put in some requirement for alternative parking provision for the existing residents whilst the construction is going on. Maybe on the site itself, I don't know, but that would be helpful. And the other aspect concerning the residents is that it is going to be extremely disruptive for the residents down there. It's a very quiet road, and all of a sudden there's going to be a lot of construction work going on, especially if it is phased. And can that be covered in some way in the conditions that there is a communication channel between the residents and the developer, and some strict controls over times of work, lighting, not only times of work, but times of deliveries, because that, again, is something we've experienced in Old Newton before, complete disregard of the time requirements. I think that's all I had to cover. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the ward members? Councillor Elkin.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a bit more. I think it's the Old Newton Community Environmental Group, with the group who mentioned turtle doves actually nesting and using that site. I was a bit concerned here that hasn't been checked in surveys. I just wondered, is that widely known that turtle doves are using that site, or is that just one kind of instance?
I haven't had a chance to talk to the group themselves, but so I can't answer specifically about the site, but I do know that turtle doves are seen in Old Newton.
Thank you. Any further questions of the ward members? Thank you very much. I will now open this item up for debate. Anyone wish to make a start? Councillor Hardingham?
Yeah, well, I'll come back to the question of turtle doves, because that seems to be a major sticking point, really, that hasn't been considered. The ecological survey looked at principally bats, which were perhaps not likely to be there in any great quantities because this is scrub, which doesn't provide roosting opportunities. Turtle doves have a preference, well, in fact, a requirement almost for dense scrub, and it seems to me very remiss that bird surveys weren't carried out at appropriate times of year, particularly in view of the hearsay evidence that turtle doves are seen. So I'm stuck on that one. Wait to hear what other members have to say.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Penny?
The ward member talked about the liaison. I can't see in the conditions anywhere that we've got the requirement to establish a point of contact with the developer or developers. So I would quite like to see a condition there that there is a point of contact established or some community liaison arranged during construction.
Comment on that, Gemma?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's something that was raised about Cross Green made me think we've got a construction environmental management plan, but we haven't got a construction management plan, and that strikes me as the best way to perhaps deal with construction traffic and also timing and a contact. So we could mop up all of those things with one condition, essentially, by putting a construction management plan condition on if members were happy. I think Brad wants to come in there.
Yeah, just on that other point, Councillor, there's in the list of conditions, there's one that says notification neighbours prior to the commencement of works, and I think that was an environmental health officer requirement. We could obviously then boost that condition and say that, you know, there's got to be a point of contact. That would normally be included within the construction management plan, but we could include that to make absolutely certain that there should be that sort of level of liaison as well. Excuse me.
Thank you. Councillor Elkin?
Thank you. I mean, it's positive having self-build plots because I know, and I think there is demand for them. But I am really concerned by some of the environmental aspects. I wanted to ask if I should have asked earlier maybe, the narrow strip of land that's sort of also owned by the same owner, that is currently scrubby woodland, just a long narrow strip along the playing field, I think is outside the red line. Is it reasonable that could be protected and not have anything done to it? I mean, clearly it's small, it's not going to get built on, but people encroach, if your back garden backs onto it, people start adopting bits, chopping things down, is there anything that could be done to protect that. And I'm also really concerned about the fact that nobody's surveyed for turtle doves if they've been reported there, because they're one of the rarest birds we have in this country. So yeah, I'm feeling a bit stuck on this as well. But with the working hours, you mentioned the construction management plan. Would working hours get covered in that, and would that include things like deliveries were mentioned, so they're not getting big pallets of stuff delivered at 6 o'clock in the morning? Is that something that is normally covered? Because sometimes it seems to be and sometimes not in those things. Is that something that could be included as well? Sorry, that's more question. Thinking out loud.
Thank you, Councillor. With regard to the issue of the blue land, it is owned or controlled. There's no intention shown on that drawing to encroach within it. The only link that was shown through that land to the recreation ground has been removed. So you're right, it doesn't need to actually be, it is land, but it doesn't need to provide any form of access whatsoever, and it can be left. The way that the development would work means that boundary fences or rear boundary fences of dwellings on that strip would actually go up to that boundary, so there would be no access through enabled as part of the development. So in terms of that being an area that's left, I think as far as we could ever be certain in planning at this stage, that is the intention. Were it in, I mean, the other issues to bear in mind is, were it proposed to include that area as part of a future application, then it increases the whole floor space and everything else, so it just creates a different issue. So it'd have to all be reconsidered again. The construction management plan would, the ones I've seen would normally include hours of work and delivery. We would certainly want to secure that, absolutely. And I can't provide any comfort on the turtle doves aspect of it, I'm afraid, because of the survey work that's been carried out.
I think Gemma wants to come in.
Well, if that's all right, I've been busy reading the preliminary ecological appraisal and just having a little look through that. So it doesn't survey specifically for turtle doves. It does look at the red and amber list of species, of which it lists a large variety. So long a list that I'm not even going to try and read it out loud. There is a lot of species that may potentially be present with the red and amber species that are local to the area. So it recognises that, including turtle doves. It does specifically note that it could be used for nesting turtle doves. And what it suggests is making sure that that a full survey is unlikely to be proportional because of the size of the site and the limited amount of nesting that's available because of the types on site. So it sort of gives a balanced approach to say it's probably not so valuable that we should check if there are species there, but there could be. And what it suggests is work should be undertaken outside 1st of March to 31st of August so that we avoid removing any habitats while they were nesting, for example. So that's something that we commonly do see. That, I suspect, would be part of the construction environmental management plan. So how do you construct and be environmentally cautious at the same time? It also looks to aim to enhance bird foraging and nesting habitat. That's part of that biodiversity enhancement that we can make sure we secure. And then again, it goes on to list a variety of enhancements which are integrated swift bricks, additional nesting habitats for birds with integral nest boxes. Then there's some more details on where you put the boxes. Aim to create areas of dense shrubbery, creating dense hedgerow features around the site, and then asking for some small whole nest boxes positioned on the shrubs and small trees. So there is a consideration given to it by the technical ecologist, and that will have been reviewed by our own ecologist. That is probably about as much information as we've got on that.
And can all of those suggestions be incorporated into our biodiversity enhancement condition if necessary?
Yes, what we do with the biodiversity enhancement condition, I might come check on Brad's plan for that, but normally it would be submit a scheme for them, and then we'll check off against the list that they've achieved that.
I think just to add further comfort, hopefully, as part of the summarised list, there's one that requires, and it was our ecologist has recommended that the development is undertaken in accordance with the ecology report recommendations that Gemma's just identified. So there's a further safeguard, as well as reports regarding biodiversity improvements, enhancements. That PEA that Gemma's just referred to would be identified as a document as part of the commission.
Thank you. Anyone else got any comments? Well, if not, I'll make my comments. I sort of understand that there is a need for self-build plots, but I am very cynical of the whole self-build process, because it just seems to be a cop-out. You don't have to pay SIL, you don't have to do any biodiversity net gain, and you've just sort of got to put someone in your family there for 3 years. And I think it's a bit of a loophole, personally. But this is 8 dwellings. It is within the settlement boundary, and as I said, people seem to tell me that there's a need for self-build plots, so we can't really refuse it on the grounds that I'm just a cynic, and I just hope that they can really truly be self-build, and they come in and they are genuine people who are going to add to the community of Old Newton, build a lovely little house and stay there. Let's just hope that is what happens with the self-build plots. Yeah, there are constraints with the access, and although we have a construction management condition now, which will include times, it is impossible, as I understand, to condition third-party deliveries. And if they turn up before the site is allowed to be, the opening time of the site, they may park in Cross Green with their engines running, blocking the road. But I don't think we can do a lot about that. Can we actually, because it's quite narrow and it's got parked vehicles on, is there any way we can get them to only use small lorries and not big ones, given that it's a difficult access? I don't know whether, and they are only going to be one plot. And I'd also like to comment on the fact that we're going to expect 8 reserve matters applications to come through, one for each plot. So whatever construction traffic there is could go on for a long time, because you could have one plot and then a little gap, and then the next plot could come along, and then the next plot. So in a way, I would like to stick with all of the reserve matters have got to be within the time limit. Just otherwise, it could go on for years, and you could have 4 very nice houses with a bit of, building site next door for another 20 years if we don't put that constraint in. So I'd be happy if they all had to come in within the standard time limit. Yeah, I mean, and the business about the path that goes through to the playing field, if it was me, I'd want a path through to the playing field. I think we ought to increase pedestrian connectivity as much as we can. But if that's what the parish council don't want any access, then fine, we'll stick with that. But I'm not sure that would have been that bad a thing to allow people to walk into the playing field from another direction. So yeah, I think broadly, I don't think we can refuse this. I just hope the self-builds can be enforced properly, and all those other biodiversity enhancements that we've talked about and sustainability enhancements. I think it would be good if we can include those as well. Councillor Haddingham.
Thank you. I agree broadly with what you've said and what everyone else has said. There's pros and cons about, with most things, and certainly with this application. But I do think that, however cynical we want to be, that there is a need for self-builds, and I do think these are, hopefully all going to be single story, and as long as we can put the conditions in that the attics are not used, and that, there'll be, no one's going to build something with sort of stud height of 6 metres or something crazy. So I think with everything that's been mentioned, with all the ecological conditions and looking out for turf clubs and all the rest of it, then I'm happy to go along with your recommendation for approval. And yeah.
Are you actually making a proposal? Are you actually making a proposal?
Yes, I am.
Right. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Warboys, but I'm going to go for Councillor Lawrence because I think he's had his hand up and I haven't spotted it. Yeah.
And I think I totally hear what you're saying about with you know, several, you know, all the different houses. There'll be the work will be elongated out. However, because it will only be for one or possibly two houses at a time, there will be less of it. You know, and so I just want to, you know, I think that's a, you know, just there won't be quite, like I say, if they were building all the houses at one time, it would be like a bit of a nightmare. But as they're building one house at a time, I would hope that the traffic wouldn't be so bad. Yes, it's spread out over a longer time, but hopefully it won't be so bad on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you. Councillor Lawrence.
Yes, I'd just like to make the point. I think there was obviously a genuine concern about construction traffic, but surely the whole change of the phasing to get the site roads put in first is to get that construction traffic off the road, outside the site, blocking it, and get it into the site and out the way. So I think we're putting a little bit too much emphasis on the construction traffic impact because it's being covered by phase one condition requirement. The other thing is, I'm a little bit confused on, we've got an application of which the only thing it really is the road access, and the rest is reserved matters. But in the list of conditions, for instance, we have things like full daily totals of air source heat pumps. Well, what's that got to do with the road? So I'm a bit confused about why some of these conditions are in here. And if we can have that, I take on Councillor Hardingham's point, we should be conditioning the provision of ducting for solar panels and solar panels on the roofs. And so at the moment, I'm not ready to contribute to a vote because I don't think we've cleared up why we've got conditions in here which aren't pertinent to the road, because that's the application.
As I understand it, we have to put these conditions on outlines, and often we've come to a sticking point when we've had reserved matters come to committee and we can't add them then, but maybe the planning officers can explain that better than I can.
I think that's absolutely right. And I understand the point you're making, Councillor. It's a question of whether you can impose a condition at outline stage that's meant to direct reserve matters, the submission of reserve matters, so you have regard to those conditions across the whole site in relation to individual elements and how you control that. The conditions that are imposed by the Highway Authority are detailed conditions in relation to the access because they relate specifically to that work for which full planning permission is being granted. What I've tried to capture in the report, the suggested conditions, are conditions that could be reasonably imposed on an outline planning application. You mentioned the ducting. I think because that's a detail that I think could be, for example, included within a sustainability report and as part of a detailed plan for a dwelling, and where individual photovoltaics, for example, would be located on roofs. I think at that stage, that's appropriate to consider that point individually with each unit. But I'm hoping, and colleagues might correct me, but I think that the list of summarised conditions are appropriate for an outline planning permission.
Thank you.
Councillor Elkin?
Sorry, Chair, I know I've spoken already, but can I have a question? Thank you. Sorry to come back to that little strip of land that's along the blue land, but it just occurred to me, if you mentioned that everybody who backs onto it with the self-builds is going to have their garden ends and their fences, and it's got hedging and a chain link fence the other side. So we're creating a strip of land that no one can get into or use, and the developer can't really use or access to maintain. And we've probably all got little patches like that in our wards that just become slightly neglected, forgotten problem bits, and no one's sure who's responsible. And I just wondered if the developer can't do anything else with it, would the old Newton Community Environmental Group like a little gate somewhere so they could go in and manage it for wildlife? They may have absolutely no interest in doing that, I don't know, but it just seemed nobody else is going to be able to get in there or do anything with it. It was just a thought.
Well, you're being asked to consider the development in front of you today, and that's an easy answer. But I think that the fact that there's nothing proposed to be used on that land at the moment it would be a matter of fact. If it were proposed to use it for alternative purposes, perhaps as a community element, that's a matter firstly for the applicant to consider, but also whether it requires in itself some sort of different control under planning, frankly, because if it's going to be, it has no value, it has no use specifically at this point in time. It's part of an overall site, and I dare say if you went and looked at that site, walked through, you would see no barrier physical between the site we're considering and that strip. So I think that firstly a barrier would exist in regard to the encroachment, but the future use of that land I think is something that we'd have to consider as and when it came in. Certainly nothing can be developed on there without planning permission if it's development requiring planning permission. I think that's as much as I can say on that.
Thank you. Councillor Warboys.
I'd just like to come in and second the proposal, actually, if that's possible at this moment.
Yeah, we'd already got you down as seconding. Did you want to add to the debate?
Yeah, I'm less cynical about self-build, I must confess. I'd like to think that the people who buy these plots are actually going to sort of do their very best to make their homes energy efficient, future-proof, and actually sort of look forward to sort of what we call an enhanced biodiversity strategy, I think. I think it's been really interesting to listen to the way the planning officers have actually sort of explored what can be done with a design code and actually sort of just bear these self-builders in mind of the context in where they're working. So we've actually got use of materials and, you know, supporting the notion of a sort of designed environment rather than sort of an ad hoc assembly. I think there may well be issues about traffic management simply because of the nature of it, that there's going to be potentially 8 developments going on. And I think, again, we need to be sort of reasonable about the length of time developments are going to take place. I mean, it may well be someone who's actually doing all the work themselves rather than contracting it all out. And I do know that in that context it takes a lot longer than you usually expect. So I'm happy to propose this. I thought, great, we've got 8 bungalows of different sizes. And I think it's a very effective use of the land there as a sort of quite an awkward plot of land with, as being discussed, restricted access. But I think this is a good use of the land, and we've got the 8 bungalows at the end of it, which are sort of important asset for the community. And you know, I wish the people who buy the plots the best of luck with their development, really.
Thank you. Any further comments? Regarding this strip of land that's going to sort of remain as sort of scrub, although it's outside the red line area, can we put a sort of informative that the future, that's to be left as scrub and not cleared? I know we've had assurances from the agent that they're only going to clear the
would encourage use those sorts of phrases. I mean, clearly we couldn't condition anything like that. We can condition on blue land, as you know.
But if there is a sort of Old Newton Environment Group, maybe they might be willing to do a bit of wildlife management or something on there. But clearly it's not part of the planning application because it's outside the red line area. But given all the comments from the committee, I think it's important that space is left as a wild space for the environment. And we don't want it just to be bulldozed. And as you say, once the houses have been built and it's just a piece of scrub at the back of their garden, it might need a little bit of management now and again. I'm just sort of thinking of the future, really. But I don't know if that can be added on as a sort of informative that some future thought to how that piece of land is going to be managed for wildlife in the future. That would be good.
I think that would be fine as informative, Chair, and obviously the applicant's agents heard this as well. So,
Is there anything else anybody wants to add? If not, I think we'd better have Gemma going through all of the additional wordings and additional conditions that have been mentioned, and then check with the proposer and seconder that they're happy with that.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Chair. So the current proposal would be approval as recommendation on pages 32 and 33. The additional conditions that I've noted would be that the hedgehog-friendly fencing is included in the biodiversity strategy condition, that permitted development rights for additional stories and for openings within roofs is removed, a construction management plan is to be agreed, and that we have an informative for management of the blue line land to support wild space for biodiversity. I hope that was everything, everybody.
There was also, wasn't there, an extra condition on the late papers about the phasing and something else?
There's an amendment to existing.
Oh, don't remove any of the boundary hedging. That they're on the late papers, so are they included as well?
well, I think that the reference to phasing condition is already in your report, but it's been beefed up a bit. The second one is a separate condition that we would seek to impose as well. Yeah.
So, are the proposer and seconder happy with that? With those conditions?
Sorry, Chair. I thought we were going to name some specific species, such as hedgehogs, swallows, and turtle doves.
So what was the biodiversity enhancement condition, or whatever it was?
Yeah, so the standard condition would be that we leave it up to them to propose a scheme for biodiversity enhancements, and it would be based off the PEA that we've already got, but they could develop that so that if there is a particular brick or design that goes well with that particular house, they can integrate that into that property. But essentially it's fairly flexible. I have suggested we add hedgehog-friendly fencing to make sure that's included in that biodiversity strategy. If there are specifics, we could add them, but there is quite an extensive list. Having read through that PEA while we were discussing, there is a lot of suggestions in there that I think we could take forward. I didn't spot hedgehogs in there, so I'm happy to include it, but I think probably if we start listing things, we might miss future opportunities that they take up, if I'm honest.
I'm worried about being too specific with the list,
that
because
that
things might get missed. But if we say it's in line with the report, well, whoever it was who did that report, and so some of those things that are at least considered, hopefully that will cover it. So are we happy with what we're voting for? Are we happy with all the conditions? So I'm going to ask the Governance Officer to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is in progress. Thank you, members. Chair, that's 6 votes for and 1 against. That's carried.
Thank you very much. So that's all we have, all the cases we have for today. So now we're on to last item on the agenda, item 8, site inspection. Are there any site inspections?
None received, Chair.
Thank you. So the next meeting of Mid-Suffolk Planning Committee will be on Wednesday the 22nd of October at 9:30 here in the Council Chamber. So I'm going to close the meeting at 11:40.